and I'm going to read through them just because I believe it's important for us to all sponsor and visit them when we have an opportunity. Absolute Building Maintenance, the Baymont Inn, Benchley Brothers, Big Apple Bagel, Bowrick Salon, the Brass Cafe, Bees Music, B-Tan, Central Vending, Chemical Bank, Coffee Talk, Coin Oil, Dragon Express, Gateway Restaurants, Isabella Community Credit Union, Jet's Pizza, Kroger, Meijer, the Mount Pleasant Fraternal Order of Eagles, Mora Media Records, Reed City Moose Lodge number 705, RK Water Store, Skips Pool and Spa, Walmart, Young's Consulting, Osceola County Community Foundation, and of course the great collaboration that we've had today with Mr. Numerous and an abundance of CMU volunteers, so thank you to them and everything that Central Michigan University does for us. Yes, absolutely. Our partners from the Nimke Memorial Wellness Clinic, we're happy to have them there, and of course our live remote from CFX Radio. I also want to give a shout out to the Mountain Town Mayhem. The ladies are having is it a derby? About tonight at 6 o'clock at Spinning Wheels, and they are giving a percentage of their proceeds from tonight's bout back to this program. So we're very thankful and grateful. Before we introduce our speaker, I just want to let everyone know that every 9.5 minutes somebody in the United States is infected with HIV. So in the time that you're out walking and having a good time this morning and this beautiful day, about 16 people in the United States will become infected with HIV. 1 of 4 people that are infected will not know that they're infected. So it's important through our case management program for you to know that the funds raised today are going to remain in our local community. And they'll be used to help those with HIV and AIDS with basic needs such as medical care and medications, housing, food, and utility assistance. So again, thank you. Your money will all stay here within the Central Michigan area. Just a few reminders. Don't forget to stick around after the walk. We do have some silent auction items that I'm hoping you all take a chance to look at and bid. We do have some prize drawings. We'll be announcing the fundraising winners. And of course, we would like you to all fill out the evaluation so that we can make this an even better event next year. Of course, I get to stand up here and be the figurehead for the health department, but it really is a team effort. So I do need to recognize the folks who have made this possible within the Central Michigan District Health Department. I think many of you know Katrina Weber. As well as Lori Young. Our wonderful CMU volunteer intern this semester, Antal Babbitt. And our dietitian nutritionist, Katie Mora, who's here this summer. And then we also have just a number of Central Michigan District Health Department employees that are participating in the event today, either as walkers or volunteers. So again, I would be here half the morning. I know you want to get out there and enjoy your time. So what I'm going to do now is introduce our speaker for this morning. He is someone who has served our country honorably in the United States Air Force with tours in Saudi Arabia, and he's had a few top secret trips before he was honorably discharged. He moved to New York City where he became active in the gay rights organizations. As a behind-the-scenes kind of guy, he preferred to do the grunt work, never caring for the spotlight nor the center stage. Years of protesting, chanting, and actions taught him how to not accept the status quo. He became the development director for the only public access TV show dedicated to the lesbian gay community, appropriately called Gay Cable Network, and was the fundraising chair for many organizations. He loves community outreach and has enjoyed working with the Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS. It is our pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Mr. Dino Rossi.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Well, got a speech. Seems like a lot of people like going back to the good old days. People like to look back in time. Old songs, old movies, old fashion. Never thought I'd be equated to vintage. Look at the popularity of MTV's television show, I Love the 80s. Well, the 80s were a very intense time. That's the decade that AIDS was discovered. Then it was ignored. After it couldn't be ignored, people with AIDS were demonized. Many, many people died. So forgive me if I don't love the 80s. Of course, there were people who stood up to this epidemic back then, and people who stood up to those who did nothing to help those who were living with AIDS. I repeat, nothing. Even some elected officials chose to turn their back. Speaking out about AIDS early in the epidemic and putting our government's resources towards fighting the epidemic could have saved thousands of lives. But because early on, those diagnosed were people of color, drug users, or gay people, they let them die. I was living in New York City at the time all this was happening. I stood up for my partner who was living with AIDS and killed himself because of it. For friends who had AIDS and for myself, because I've been living with AIDS since 1985, 26 years. I joined the AIDS activist group ACT UP, and we kicked the stuffing out of people who were not doing enough and letting us die, even though they were supposedly in charge of helping us live. Politicians, doctors, social workers. We taught them how to find new medicines and ways to find around a broken medical system. We pushed for laws to protect the rights of people with AIDS. We protested crooked politicians and hypocritical religious leaders. We raised hell. So the 80s are behind us, right? Well, not really. Because we're in deep danger of returning to the 80s in terms of the AIDS epidemic. We're in danger of turning back the clock on the progress made on AIDS since then. Look at the facts. People continue to get HIV infections even though we know how to protect ourselves. People of color continue to be the biggest casualties in this country in terms of AIDS. And the current drugs available don't work for everybody. Even recently, much of the progress made in this epidemic has been eroded by government cuts in funding. And funding for studies of gay men with AIDS soon dried up. We are abandoned again. We can't afford to go back to the 80s when it comes to AIDS. We have to continue to fight to keep the focus on AIDS. The AIDS crisis is not over. They say that AIDS is no longer a death sentence, that it's a manageable disease. Well, not quite. You know, look at me, one of the faces of AIDS in America today. Every day living with HIV, I have dealt with poisonous medicines and lots of crippling side effects. For many people, AIDS is off the radar and compassion has dropped. I'm glad you're here. You're all here today because you give me hope. Hope that we will continue to fight AIDS, that we will continue to raise hell among politicians and religious leaders who either abandon or demonize us. Raise hell against people who want to cut funding in AIDS research for healthcare. Thank you for being here today. You're clearly committed to keep the battle against AIDS going forward. So keep fighting and keep walking. I love y'all.
All right, well, let's get out there and spread some awareness, shall we? Katrina, over here. There'll be a banner, and we'll get you out walking. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Dino.
shy. I need to pass it along because I ain't good with math. We're going to be in the first one.